Watch.
Hey, welcome y'all! Woo! That's right. From the PETM podcast studio in Atlanta, Georgia. How do you like that intro? This is the PETM Racing Podcast, episode number 36 for Tuesday, February 23rd, 2015. I am Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace, joined as always by pregame engineer Andrew Sherwin. What's happening, man?
Welcome to another episode of the fastest evolving, fastest growing podcast on the internet.
That's right. We sound really professional with our new intros. I like that. So, maybe we'll keep coming up with silly and crazy things to say and complete and total fabrications.
Well, sometimes it doesn't matter if you fabricate a little bit.
Well, no doubt. Who's going to call us out on it? Sherwin, what you drinking today?
I am drinking local product, Sweetwater Brewing. Take 2 pills and call me in the morning Pilsner.
Sounds delicious. I've had it. It is delicious.
It's a dry hop Pilsner. Very tasty.
I've got a new offering from the same brewery. It's the...
Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, yep.
Rusty, what are you drinking?
Well, I have a... I have a brew from the same brewery. It's called Hash Session IPA. So it's like their hash.
Oh, that's their double dry hopped session.
Yeah.
Fun.
So it's got infused with their hop hash deal that they do. And I think it's like 4.2% or something. Yep, 4.2%. You can just drink it all day.
Yep.
Like
it's the same ABV as Miller Lite.
Yep.
Just with a lot more flavor. Hey, what was that? I was looking in the store the other day. What is that Sam Adams Pilsner beer that we like so much?
Oh, Noble Pills, dude.
Noble, that's what it was. Yeah.
Noble Pills.
Noble Pills. So Sam Adams sort of started the movement of let's have a chewy beer that you could drink several of.
Yeah, all day at the lake or at the campsite or something.
Lake beer, or if you get it in like Recreation Ale from Terrapin, you just kind of throw that thing in the backpack and off you go. Anywho, we already diverged quite a bit. Want to get right into a little bit of NASCAR stuff here?
Let's talk about Daytona.
How about Daytona?
That was fun.
We want to talk about Saturday or Sunday?
Well, let's start with Sunday. We'll get right into the meat of this, and we can't talk about Sunday without giving props to our guest last week.
Well, we had our first call-in co-host, the right front tire, Evan Stark, called the winner of the race. Good on him.
And he was the first pick of the season on the first podcast before the first race and all that. I mean, he was the first to pick and everything, so that's major props. And I tweeted at him, and I said, that's the last time we let a guest pick first.
Right, that'll be his last shot at picking first, because we're not to be shown up on our own podcast.
On our own deal.
Evan, jerk. Just kidding. That was good call. Those Gibbs cars were lightning, especially when they got lined up together.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about that finish, man? So we had Kenseth.
How about we didn't wreck a whole crap load of cars?
Well, that was also a huge plus.
Did I just bury the lead? I mean,
no, not at all. But not wrecking a whole bunch of cars. Matt Kenseth kind of squirreled up a little bit and got out there, and it got Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex able to run side by side. And what a finish! Ended up, I think half the NASCAR community did this, which was jumped up off their couch and screamed and yelled because they thought that Truex had gone across the line first.
I know we did.
And,
I mean, all other BS aside, seeing Truex win that race would have been – I mean, we certainly don't want to take anything away from Denny. It's his first shot at the biggest race too, but just all of the things. Mm-hmm. I mean, Sherry's health, the Toyota – rebirth of relationship, Bass Pro coming back, all of the positive things for Martin Truex Jr. I can't imagine what his emotions would have been if he'd have won, because they were in the right place, finishing second.
Yeah. So we were excited at the end, and then seeing it photo finish. You can't argue with that. It was right, and like you already said, kind of hats off to Denny on that finish. Is sort of and Matt Weaver, actually, who we've talked about on this before, released a great interview with, I believe it was Denny's spotter, and he was saying, it was spotter or crew chief?
Yeah, 3 wide middle. At 3 wide middle.
Yeah, and he was. They were talking about the strategy there at the end, what they were talking about doing. they were talking about just getting in a line, and the Gibbs cars getting in a line, and I think it was it Harvick that kind of messed that up for him, and so then they were trying to block Harvick.
Harvick. They were giving a lot of credit for how well Joey's car could push.
Yes.
And Joey was just climbing in the trunk of Harvick's car. And Denny, I guess the feeling was that Denny needed to block that line in order for one of his team cars to win, and he went up there and got hit so
shot
hard.
Out of a rocket.
Yeah, just like he got in the slingshot, just like a little bit different than what Talladega Nights is, but sure enough, the slingshot, the catbird seat, and then he got going so quick. Kenseth couldn't get up in front of him in time, and so Kenseth goes to block high. Denny's already moving low because he's got such a run. Kenseth's like, there he goes low, and he turns it and turns it and turns it, and you see what happened. The same thing that happened to Chase and the same thing that happened to Dale Jr. is car was tight, and then it breaks loose. And luckily for Matt, he was up there near the wall and kind of
played off the wall a little bit.
It in front of the field, like Jr. and Chase almost did.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you, that's the kind of finish that we loved about really all three races this weekend. And we had a lot of good finishes. We'll get to the other races here in a little bit, but it brings me to what I told you was Rusty's monologue this week.
All right, monologue it up. I'll start drinking.
Not that beer. I have one every week.
I got some whiskey over here too.
But I think you and I would agree, and I'm just going to put words in your mouth, that this was probably the best product that I've seen at Daytona in a long time.
How dare you say something that profound and be right?
Right. Well, I would say ever since the tandem racing, which we really liked a lot, but I can understand that other people do. I don't understand why they don't like it, but I'll understand that people's opinions differ from mine. So if I can't have that, let me have this. And if you're watching the whole race, and I saw some people talk about, oh, it's just a boring race, you got to go back and look at these guys actually battling with aero and stuff. This was not just going around in circles 3 wide like we've made fun of before for so long. This was actual racing. Aero mattered. Speed mattered. Strategy mattered.
Handling mattered.
Everything mattered throughout the entire race to get up front, to give yourself that shot versus just kind of randomly running around and then, okay, the big one happens. Who's left over? Now they get to sort of race the 5 laps at the end to see who's ends it under caution, you know?
Yeah, well, one of the things that if you watch enough of these races and you start to learn what all the different conditions mean. So we repaved the track. I guess it's probably been 5 years. We've had several years in a row where we dealt with rain and ended up running this race on Sunday night or on Monday night even.
Yeah, it's a 9-hour race.
And the handling doesn't come into play. Well, the track's finally worn enough that handling matters. And, oh, by the way, we got a hotter than normal, like perfect day for racing at Daytona in February. And look, you see cars that are upset. They are not happy under the conditions that they're in. And you see the best plate racer since his father, Dale Jr., just wreck himself.
Yep.
Just got tight and then snapped loose and wrecked his car.
So we had also butts in the seats. Had a packed house, sold out, they said, 101,000 seats, which is real cool.
Right.
We had the Daytona Day promotion, right? We
did, which had a polarizing effect.
Had a polarizing effect
that we've discussed already on this
I think
show.
Among fans had a polarizing effect. Among new people, I can't imagine it was negative in any way.
No.
You know? So I don't in other words, I don't think it turned anybody off. Maybe it turned somebody onto it. I thought this was real cool. Fox, I guess broadcasting, Fox Sports, whoever, sent out these Daytona Day helmets to a bunch of celebrities. I saw that one of them went out to Justin
like a race
Bieber.
Helmet.
Yeah, and whatever you want to say about Justin Bieber, we'll say this.
He's got like 3 million followers.
Exactly. He's got reach. So when he posts a picture of his helmet that they sent him, and then he says, hashtag Daytona Day, and it gets 3 million views or something, that's, again, great marketing, great everything. So we come back next day. So we've had great marketing. We've got butts in the seats. Everything's looking good. I thought it was a really great show. And then on top of that, we had one of the best races and best finishes and the closest finish. They say 100th of a second, but we're talking about somebody did the feet.
Since electronic scoring.
Yeah. Somebody did the number of feet. They said, there's 4 million something, 3 million something feet in this race, and it was won by 4 inches, a third of that, third of one of those feet.
Yeah,
which is real cool. In the end, I was really, after you think about all that, I was a little bit surprised. End of the day comes out overnight ratings, and overnight ratings were down from last year, like 7%. And overall, I think they said it was the worst. It'll end up being the worst overnight ratings since they started keeping it in 1979. Now, there's some caveats with that. In 1979, there were 3 channels to watch. So, obviously, they're going to have a bigger share at that point. But in the end, I went on and I saw a lot of people complaining all over the board about different stuff. One of them was, well, this race is boring. Well, historically, I would agree with them. But this particular race, this last one was what I was trying to say in this monologue, is this was a very compelling race, and I really enjoyed watching it wire to wire. Other people say...
See, I didn't.
Really?
I thought it was 495 miles and nothing, and then a really exciting finish.
This time around?
Yeah.
I thought we were just talking about how the arrow mattered, everything else mattered to get up front.
Yeah, but it's still the same thing, though. I guess I'm trying to take... It was exciting that we had a couple people wreck under conditions we haven't seen in a while, but to me, that didn't get it to compelling.
What would it take to get... What's compelling about Atlanta, then, the first 200 or 300 miles, or some other...
I can't tell you. It's the same thing I would say about do the first 8 innings of a baseball game matter? Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to piss in your Cheerios or any of that. I saw it as a lot of the same. Now, one of the things I'm really happy about is that we were able to race all day with most of the cars in contention and not wrecking and.
Well, you can take some of the wind out, but I'll continue with what I said before, which I think you do agree with, which is this was one of the most compelling races wire to wire that we've had in a while.
I think you're right about that. I
so
think you're right.
Maybe,
and I'm not trying to drag you down. That
no, and maybe too. I am really excited to finally have cars on the track again. So I was just enthralled anyway. But what were you going to say?
Oh no!
So
I thought if this is a good lead-in to another segment, then that's why I postured the way I did.
Right. So, I really think, and I saw all kinds of reactions on Twitter and stuff, and then I started thinking about what old Right Front Tire said last week, and we said, what's one thing you'd change about NASCAR? He said they need to stop listening to fans so much, in not as many words.
I actually agree with him on that.
But I agree in the sense that I think it was a polished product this year. I think it's better than what we've had in years past, and probably one of the better Daytonas that I've seen live, minus some of the tandem stuff that we've had before that I really am compelled with. So I would tend to say, piggybacking on what Right Front Tire said last week, this is a new product for NASCAR. They changed rules so much that I think they finally got something that's better than anything else that they've done at this track. And they've got the marketing out there and everything. Then let's do it again next year. See how that goes. Maybe more people like me will talk it up.
I think they did very well with what the racing package was. The problem is the last 2 years when it was very similar, that they didn't get the weather they needed for the package to shine. So we got that. So
true.
The product that was on the track, what we saw on Sunday for 3 hours and 10 minutes, was a better product than we've seen at Daytona, at least for the 500, in 2, 3, 4 years maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there was one in between. And I think what I'm waiting for is when we see conditions get to a point that we're not used to, or something a little bit changes that maybe the fans don't catch on to, but it slowly starts to leak out over time, where the drivers say, well, I mean, maybe the reason why they didn't have the big one is because the car didn't handle well enough to stay in the throttle the way that they did the last couple of years, which is an interesting thing to know.
Mm-hmm.
It lets you know that things are changing. Things are a little bit different at Daytona. I think what you and I have said, or at least what I have said based on watching old races on DVD, is that these restrictor plate races, when they were really compelling in the 90s, and even in the early 2000s, cars weren't stacked up underneath each other. Mm-hmm. There was space in between. So if you had something about you or some knowledge or something better in your car that allowed you to do what Dale Earnhardt did for so many years, allowed you to do what Dale Jr. is now still able to do, or has reawakened the last couple of years as the rule book has gone back to sort of what we maybe had in the early 2000s, it's just a better thing. It's not all these cars stacked up underneath each other's tail ends, and maybe that's the reason why we didn't have a big one.
When you talked about it too, or you and I talked about it before, which was we've been wanting these cars harder to drive as well. And so maybe going around in circles for the first 195 laps is too easy the way that we used to have the cars set up. And now the cars are set up and we have the right weather and everything else happens to where it takes a little more talent to keep things running for the rest of those miles.
Right. Well, I think what we'll hear as we go on and maybe as we progress towards Talladega and how they start, how they like to try to
Talladega's still got a lot to prove.
They have to differentiate between the two because they are different tracks and they require a different level of detail. But I think what we're going to hear as we get into the season is that the cars were so hard to drive at Daytona, people were white-knuckling the whole way around, and you can't drive straight up somebody's rear end 40 deep or 20 deep and make that work. So that's why we saw a little bit more space. I mean, we saw the bump drafting. The bump draft like we saw when we got into this sport returned, where you drive up into somebody on the backstretch and you hit them and they off they go.
Yep.
It wasn't as cool as it was maybe in like 03, 04, 05, 06, around in there, right before we got the car tomorrow and we started getting into that tandem thing, which we love. We probably shouldn't digress.
Keep going in.
But I don't know when we're going to segment, so I'm just going to do it and force you to stop me. One of the reasons why I wanted to present the other side of the argument.
I'm eating one of these beer jelly beans from last week.
One of the reasons why I wanted to present the other side of the argument on whether or not the race was boring, because I don't think it was, because I watched it with you. We had a blast.
We ate pork tacos.
The Tony Kornheiser podcast for yesterday. And what he did was he said that he watches the Daytona 500 every year because he has the daily program, and he knows that at some point they're going to have to hit that topic. So it's beneficial for him to watch the race and see what happens. But every year he watches it, he's like, I don't understand I don't get it. Why is this a thing? Mm-hmm. And if you listen to it and you only have your vitriol button turned on, you can be the old guard NASCAR that's going to get as pissed off and see red as hard as you've ever seen red when you hear this guy. Because it sounds like he's putting down the sport, but he's not. Mm-hmm. And what he's giving you his opinion. And that's why we like this podcast is different than a lot of other podcasts we listen to that are related to NASCAR, because we don't really care if you don't like what we have to say. That's why we're saying it, is because it's our opinion. We certainly want people to listen to it, but for sure don't be turned off because we said we think Dale Jr. had a bad race, or maybe we don't always like Denny Hamlin, or whatever it is. Or you and I kind of are at odds with Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski, which makes it more fun, makes the conversation more fun. So what I would say is, I'm
still waiting for them to be like 1-2 on some race so we can get in a fist fight.
Yeah, sure. And so what I would say is, if you listen to podcasts, go out there and download Tony Kornheiser's podcast from February 22nd, yesterday, and listen to the first 12 and a half, I think it's 13 and a half minutes, and listen to what he has to say about NASCAR and the Daytona 500 and his co-hosts, because none of them know anything about NASCAR, even though they've all been exposed to drivers that they're impressed with that are human beings, like Jimmy
and interviewed
Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Brad Keselowski. And they give a very honest opinion. It's the outsider opinion. It's the person who isn't exposed to NASCAR in a way that fosters a love and desire to participate in it, or as a fan at least to participate in it. And it's a necessary thing to hear that, because there's all kinds of sports out there. I catch a fat ration of you-know-what over being a NASCAR fan over being a golf fan, over being a soccer fan, and telling people that I watched 148 baseball games last year.
Oh, yeah, you got the superfecta on boring sports.
Yeah, I've got the super. I've got all 4 of them. If I go down to the dog track and I bet NASCAR, soccer, golf, and baseball, and I'm going to come up a winner, whatever that weird race is. But it's so those sports all get classified as boring. We'll put the air quotes around. I'm doing the quotes thing that everybody hates. Those are the boring sports. But you know what? If you understand the finer points of it and it's something you can engage in, like you and I both play golf. We're not good at it, but we play it. You played baseball. I've played baseball in the yard. I have an idea of what it is. I played soccer my whole entire youth. And you and I have been going to NASCAR races every year since 2004. We have intimate knowledge and passion for those sports. So to us, they're not boring. So
right.
Even when I say, I think the casual fan might have thought the first 495 miles of Daytona were boring. I didn't.
Sure. So I think, and Kornheiser said that on his podcast too. And like you said, if you can sort of take off your vitriol hat and listen to the whole thing, he said, look, guys, I understand that to get into a sport, you have to know and you have to appreciate all the finer points. And he says, I don't know those, and I don't know what they are. Now, to me, my only question was, can't you say that exactly like you're saying? Can't you say that about any sport that you're not into? So why pick on NASCAR in this certain thing? He doesn't like NASCAR. That's fine. It's fine that he doesn't. As you know, and you've seen me turn around on soccer. And mainly it's because of you and our esteemed producer, the Frizz 11, who both played soccer in high school, and that's one that Serena loves watching with me because she knows more about the sport than I do. So
yeah, she's
sitting there screaming at the ref, handball. I'm like, how do you know? She's like, it's just the angle that it went. It had to be a handball, and of course he calls it. And blah blah blah. So I'm it's cool to have that, but I had turned around on that. Why did I turn around on it? Well, I finally started understanding that, you watch a little bit more of it, you start understanding the finer points with NASCAR. Listen to the PETM podcast over this summer or over this winter break when we're talking about what a wedge adjustment is, why you need to make that little tuning and adjustment, and what these drivers are doing, and all the different things that can happen on a car. Because that was one thing Kornheiser said too: is all these cars are the same. How does one run faster than the other?
How does one go faster than the other if they're the same?
Oh my gosh, dude! Yeah. And so what I would say is, if you know all the finer points and then you still decide not to like NASCAR, that's okay. But if you refuse to learn or refuse to acknowledge those finer points or something, then you're just kind of being a hater for the sake of being a hater. I don't know where Kornheiser sits necessarily, or where that podcast sits. Like you said, they talk to these guys. They respect and appreciate what they're doing. But I think they should look into these finer points and understand what they are, and then make a decision on whether or not to endorse the sport, if you will.
Well, to completely dismiss the sport is wrong, and they don't do that. And that's what I think
you're right.
Positive of them talking about it. Even though they have no idea what they're talking about, they're not necessarily painting the sport in a great light, but they understand that it's a big enough deal that sports people ought to know that it exists and it's a thing. Like Kornheiser made a point of saying the Daytona 500 draws more eyeballs than the NBA Finals. The NASCAR season may not, but the Daytona 500 does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good point of contention because the NBA is quite popular sport.
Well, for sure, and with the number of teams and amount of reach they have and everything. So, I think I already said what I think.
Well, the thing is, we get caught up in the spot of because we're passionate, we're extremely passionate about all the sports that we really, really like. And you and I think, are unique in a lot of ways in that there aren't very many sports that we have an opportunity to consume that we just refuse to consume.
I watched Pakistan play India in cricket because one of my coworkers at the time was, I think he was Indian, and Pakistan is their biggest rival, and he was telling me all the nuances of that sport while we're watching. By the end of it, well, I say by the end of it, it's like a 5-day sport.
Was that 4 days later?
Yeah, 4 days later. By the end of it, my beard was down to my knees, and I was saying, but no, after watching it a little bit, now I'm screaming at the TV, and screaming, run, oh my God, and still thinking I have something to do with it, but just like you said, understanding those finer little points, and I can get into about any sport if I need to.
Well, I tell you what, it was just last weekend. It was last weekend. The Rugby Americas final.
Oh yeah, I remember you tweeting
was
about
on, and it was USA versus Canada, and it was like, hey man, when national pride's on the line, I'll pay attention for a minute or two.
Right.
And then I watched for 20 or 30 minutes, and I was like, you know what? It's odd how similar to football this game is. It's just there's not as many whistles. It's a more fluid game. It's like when you get tackled, if you immediately push the ball backwards, you get to maintain possession and start another play. And it's very similar to the whole 4-down concept. There's fumbles.
And see, now I want to watch and learn because all I've seen is a backyard game of smear the guy with the ball.
Oh yeah, smear the funny guy with the ball. Yeah, and it's neat. And when you see a seam open, just like we watch when we go down to Bobby Dodd and watch Georgia Tech play, you can see the seam happen, and it doesn't happen that much. Like scoring a touchdown is very tough in rugby when both teams are competitive, just like you'd expect.
Sure.
But when the seam opens up, it can be like one of those, everybody made the right block, and all of a sudden the guy's gone for 35 yards.
Yeah. So here we are talking rugby on the.
We're talking rugby on a NASCAR podcast.
Just to show y'all,
that's
we
where
can
it
get
goes.
excited, and especially, hey, the name of the USA team was the Eagles, which I thought was just awesome. And I didn't even think of it like as a crossover to Philadelphia or anything. When it's like the USA Eagles, they are.
This is our mascot.
By God.
It was like the Canadian Grizzly Bears and the American Eagles. I can't remember what Canada was. I don't.
They better not have been just like,
But it was another cool deal.
Trees or something.
Yeah, they weren't the Maple Leafs, all right? It was macho.
So we had some other exciting races this weekend.
Yeah, well, so we had one on Friday night that was a little scary.
Yes, it was.
We had a truck do 9 barrel rolls, which is scary, and he walked away. Awesome. There was some medical treatment required.
Yeah, he went to the hospital and then got released
had a back
or whatever.
Injury or
I don't think there was anything.
No, it was the guy that. Okay, I'm thinking of something completely different. So no, he was fine.
But and I'll tell you what, I think we've said it before, but graduating as a fan in NASCAR, I think part of that is seeing a wreck like that and not cheering, but rather going, "Oh my gosh, hope he gets out. Come on, man." Just you're not watching for the wrecks, like these idiots.
I wonder how many people are anymore.
There's nobody watching 500 miles to see a wreck. I can tell you that much.
I cannot imagine that being the case. I could see somebody going to a race and seeing a big wreck added to their emotional involvement in the race.
Well, that happened on lap 1 for us back in the Weaver stands in AMS when Bobby Labonte.
Our second race there.
Yeah. Was it Jeff Gordon and Bobby Labonte on the backstretch there?
It was Jeff Gordon in that neon Nicorette car, and it was like 11 other cars too.
Oh, yeah.
It was a pile up on lap 1.
I can agree with you there. That certainly enhanced it. That's what I remember. I don't remember who won that race. Junior won the first race.
I do. That was that crazy awesome Carl Edwards Jimmy Johnson finish.
Was Carl already in? I thought that was that
was 2005 spring.
Wow.
Junior won the
I'm getting old
race,
if Carl Edwards has been in the series for 11 years. Jeez.
Yes.
So, but Johnny Sauter comes across the line in pretty, I would say, dramatic fashion in the last few laps. How about that?
Basically a brand new team. Sauter jettisoned from the Thor Sport group, even though he was running quite well, competing for championships, winning races, and
he's just been one of the
couldn't put the money together.
Yeah, he's just been one of the statues of the sport for so long too. Johnny Sauter and Matt Crafton and those guys, that
For sure.
Just the name of the sport, really. And so,
really, well, then they were teammates.
Yeah. So it's cool to see. Yeah, get on up in there. There we go. I saw that register on the deal.
Got some beer on my monitor there.
Nice. I think the problem, Sherwin was trying to make some noise last week with opening up some of these bottles. I think just to take a break for a shout out, the Kenny Smith bottle opener here, 24K Kenny Smith bottle opener is just way too perfect a bottle opener.
It's got a lot of mass, which helps.
A lot of mass, so it just pulls off that top without a whole lot of racket. So.
Yeah, it's not like that flat slab of metal that the bartender carry in their back pocket that just kind of rips the thing off and makes all that noise.
So another great finish this weekend. They sounded off the horn, the siren, in the Dawsonville Pool Hall.
That's right, the Dawsonville Pool Hall. They set off the siren.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? About 6:15 Saturday afternoon.
Yep, and with Chase Elliott coming across the stripe in first, and that. Again, another compelling race, and that was the one where we were texting back and forth, and I posted that on Twitter too.
Yep.
I text, and I said that was a great finish, real tough drivers, and you said if every race was like this at Daytona, I would love plate racing.
That's right. For whatever reason, you haven't seen the finish on the Saturday Xfinity race. For sure, go watch it, and for sure watch the angle that came from Joey Logano's car, where Chase's right rear quarter panel was completely crumpled in. And then you also have to watch the view looking straight down that angle of the trioval that shows Chase just sawing.
Mm-hmm.
Like every time he started to get loose because Joey was in his right rear, he was just sawing and keeping that car in position. And that's NASCAR if there's anything. And we don't want to try to give Chase too much attention. I know I'm personally a fan, and he's a local Georgian and all that good stuff. But boy, yeah, you have to go to a strange place and not call that amazing driving.
For sure. I mean, we've seen some other guys who we give props to, regardless of whether you're a fan. We've seen Jimmy Johnson do it coming down the front stretch, and I mean just hitting the limiter on both sides of the steering wheel, just blam.
Jimmy
blam,
and Jeff
blam.
at Atlanta a few years ago when we were stuck at work, and they're both just
sawing it. And Kyle Busch is another one that comes to mind, who has done that recently. Where did he do that? Might have been not this past year.
Just about everywhere, really.
Well, yeah. If you're going to be a wheelman like that, you're going.
We saw Jeff. I think when we realized, at least when I realized that, like Jeff was the real deal, was right before they repaved Daytona, and it was like it was handling as much as it was motor then, and he's coming off turn 4, and the car's going straight into the trioval, and he's just like. Just jerking it right and left, and the car is going straight.
Right.
But he's turning the wheel, 90 degrees in each direction. Like, man, that guy can drive a race car.
Because, I'd be upside down into the wall, probably into the stands, who knows. There's some news that I think surprised you and me both. Maybe not, I shouldn't say surprised.
Driver of the 14 car?
Driver of the 14 car. I was surprised. I'm not going to say I'm not surprised. I was surprised. It's
I'm
not
not
surprising.
shocked.
I'm not shocked, I guess.
I'm surprised that's the direction they went.
I'm not surprised. If you were to tell me we're not going to put Brian Vickers in here, then I'm not surprised that, by the way, they chose Ty Dillon to run the 14 till Tony gets back. I'm not surprised that it was him, but I am surprised that they did make that leap. Brian Vickers is not polarizing. He is universally adored, I would say. I don't know.
At this point, I would say that's the case.
Especially his story with all his medical stuff, with all the stuff he's been through, and with such a positive attitude. He's just a quintessential good guy who can go out there, and he was up front at the end of the race.
Yeah, he was.
At Daytona. So I don't know if they're just trying to did they say Ty was going to run Dega?
I think they're announcing it week to week.
Probably so. I mean, hell, Tony might run.
It looked like the rest. It looked like the rest of the media was just kind of sitting around on their hands, going, "Well, we haven't received an entry list for Atlanta." Wink, wink.
Yeah,
and like everybody, the reason why is because the 14 car hasn't announced who's driving it yet.
Yeah, so I guess they are trying to do a sort of developmental thing with Ty Dillon. Is all I can figure.
It's weird because he's a competitive talent. He's not in the development fold. I struggle to understand the thought process that there's not an SHR / Hendrick development driver that would be it would be a better thing. Now, the fact that they're going to Clint next year, and it's not like we're trying to figure out who's going to drive this car next year,
right,
may twist it into something where we need to get the most amount of sponsorship dollars every week to make this car competitive and learn what we need to learn about this car in order to develop to the point where when Tony comes back, he has a legitimate chance to win races.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we saw with the 18 car last year.
Yep.
We saw 4 different drivers get in there.
Yep.
And there was a little bit of development, but for the most part, it was a seasoned veteran of very similar build to Kyle and David Reagan that got in that car and got them ready so that when Kyle got in it, it was fast. And that's the thing. If you don't develop over the first 10 to 12 races, if you don't get faster, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
You're left behind.
Mm-hmm. So Ty Dillon to the 14, at least at Atlanta. We'll see after that, I guess.
We'll see, and I think that's totally Bass Pro related. I think that's got to be Bass Pro saying, yep, we'll give our full sponsorship that we would normally give because we already have a partnership with Ty.
Mm-hmm. That takes us to Atlanta. We already said we're going to Atlanta. We're doing it. The weather is supposed to be just perfect, which is absolutely the opposite of last year, which was poopy. It was cold. And,
poopy.
Yep.
That's the best we can do on the podcast.
Yeah, on the AM radio level of cussing. So
ishy.
Yeah,
very ishy.
Right. So gonna have 65 degrees and sunny, and what can
Wonderground
I say?
keeps bumping it. Last one I saw was 69.
Attaboys. So we're gonna be there. We're gonna be at the Tweet Up. We think.
And Travis is going to be with us.
Yes, excellent. So we'll have somebody else in tow.
Ticket when we buy. So
okay,
he's going to reimburse you.
Cool. I believe we've already decided as well on what sort of beer we're showing up with at the Tweet Up at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
You daggum right.
Pretty sure for the first time in my life, I'm going to go buy a 6-pack of Busch beer.
Yeah, so do we show up with Busch or Busch Light? I guess one of us should show up with one and one should have the other.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm just going to buy a little bit, I might as well go all in and get the diesel stuff, you know what I mean?
You know what? That's a good point. That's a really good point.
So with us going to Atlanta, we're going to find a way to stay somewhere down near there, and we'll bring y'all either a bonus episode or a full episode. We don't know yet. We'll figure it out. We'll probably get excited and just be talking. But we'll bring you some episode, and that's when we're going to make our picks, and then we'll be a little smarter too on who's running well and everything.
Well, we've been exposed to a practice or 3 by then.
Yep. You know, one thing
and a race or 2 races potentially if we do it Saturday night.
One thing that I think compels me so much at a lot of the racetracks that I really like, and that we haven't seen as much at the super speedways, and that the super speedways have to improve upon. What I really think I like in a race is what you see at Atlanta almost more than anywhere, which is if your guy's running well, he's gaining a 1/10 of a second a lap, or even a 20th a lap on the next guy, right? And so he's reeling him in. And so that's what's compelling to me, going back to our conversation before about a race over the course of 500 miles, is seeing your guy making those strategy moves and the crew chief working, everybody working on that car and him hitting his lines and everything that allow him to close that gap or extend that gap if he's out front. And Atlanta's somewhere where you can just keep doing that. It don't matter if you're second, fourth, 18th, or running up front. Obviously, dude up front's got the golden parachute in that respect, but
well, not anymore.
Hopefully, with the new arrows. So that's one thing that I just love about Atlanta, and I'm looking forward to is hearing those lap times when you're up there and you're just hearing them, and it kind of lulls you into this sort of I don't know how to say it, but they're running 30-second, 32-second laps, whatever they are, and it feels like just one after the other. It feels like a second, because you're seeing him come by, you're hearing the lap time, you're digesting that, you're seeing what he's doing on the track, and then boom, next thing you know, he's coming across the line again. Here comes another time. So anyway, just something I wanted to say about Atlanta that is really compelling that we get at other tracks too, even short tracks. At Bristol, you'll hear that. But maybe that's also the key to Daytona, Talladega that we don't really see as much either.
Well, I think one of the things we've seen at Daytona over the last 10 years is we've seen the leader or somebody in the lead herd go get gone for 20 laps. And then that person come back to the field, and you never hear from them again the rest of the race. Mm-hmm. We've seen that several different races. I think some of that had to do with that really weird Car Tomorrow package, which I think now we've kind of realized wasn't great for the guys that like cars that move around a lot or get real tail happy. I think the drivers that like a tail happy car are going to get what they want this weekend. It's going to be hot and slick. If it's 70 degrees in the air, that track's going to be 95 degrees, and it's as abrasive as 4-grit sandpaper, and it's going to be really cool. I think it's going to be awesome. I think one of the things we like to hear over the radio from our driver is not just the difference between his time and the leader, if he's not the leader. It's that there's a period of time where the car actually gets faster during the run, and then it planes out. But it planes out in a place that's faster than everybody in front of him. Right. So he continues to move forward.
And out of 325 laps, they'll come on at lap 250, and they'll tell him, and he's got grit all over the tires. He's got tape, stuff taped up. Some lug nut got loose and poked a hole in the fender or something. But the crew chief will come up and say, "Hey, that was your fastest lap of the race." And you go, "Oh, man, they just dialed into something."
Right. Well, it tells you they're headed the right direction with the chassis, and that's the whole point. People don't – I didn't understand that when we first got in the sport. It's like, wait a minute, how could we run our fastest lap on the 300th lap of the race? It's like, well, dummy, they've changed tire pressure and wedge and track bar to get the car better all day long. And if they had the right center line on the chassis and they get the right feedback from the driver, that's what can happen. You can run your fastest lap in the last green flag segment of the race.
And we see guys do that. So we had a bit of news. Let's just switch topics for just a minute, just because we're fans of all kinds of stuff. UFC.
Did we get some breaking news?
We did get some breaking news.
Breaking
out of the UFC.
News. We've got breaking news.
So out of the UFC, Conor McGregor.
Dos
Anjos.
And Rafael Dos Anjos. What did he do? He boogered up his foot?
He boogered up his foot. Old Dos Anjos, however we're going to pronounce it.
It's weird. They pronounce their R's like H's, so even though it looks like Rafael, it's Rafael. Yeah. But then it's Portuguese instead of Spanish, so it's Dos Anjos.
Yeah, so they go with the J. Yeah, it's very strange. So yeah, Dos Anjos has, like you said, boogered up his foot a little bit.
Jacked his foot up a little bit.
And these guys, you see this happen so often, and I think I was emailing with you, and I said,
go so hard.
They go so hard in practice because they have to. Because if you're just kind of tapping gloves in practice, and then you get out there, and now they're just throwing haymakers at each other, you're just going to get KO'd.
Well, and never mind, he was fixing to battle like the it fighter of the world.
For sure. I think this is Conor McGregor outside of his. Isn't this outside his weight class?
Yeah, he left the weight class that he owns the belt in. He was moving up
going
10
for,
pounds
for the
lightweight,
other belt.
And he was immediately challenging for the belt in that class.
Right.
Like Dos Anjos did not need to fight that to take that fight if there was any thought in his mind he wasn't going to be 100% capable of defending.
Sure.
Which is obviously the reason why they pulled out.
Sure. And that's a bummer. But they've had some pretty compelling replacements.
I don't know that they've announced it yet. I've been waiting to see it, but I know this. Yeah, Uriah Faber went on Instagram and posted a picture of him all jacked up in a mirror and on a scale, and he only has to cut 3 pounds to make weight and has, 9 days to do it?
Yeah, and these guys can cut 3 pounds in a sweat room.
He was prepared. This is a smart businessman, Uriah, a very likable guy.
That's for sure, and that's the one thing that makes that super compelling to me too, is that I like both these guys.
Well, if you listen to Fighter and the Kid, Brendan Schaub said this should have been the fight all along. Should have been Uriah Faber, and I'm not sure which weight class, but it should have been
like a catchweight.
Uriah Faber, McGregor's the fight. Is it? But is it McGregor defending the 145 belt, or is it them both in 155? I guess at that point, Brendan was probably suggesting that it would be a 145 title defense for McGregor to fight Faber. But Faber knew the fight was going to be at 155. He knew there's a chance one of these guys might get hurt, so he's in fighting shape. Props to you, brother.
Props to you.
That's
you're
a
right
marketing
about
genius.
A businessman and marketing genius. So we'll abandon the topic now, but just a little bit of news there for another sport that we're passionate about,
That's right, and I think there's a lot of crossover between NASCAR fans and UFC.
I think so. Let's move on to this guy right here. We've got
who are we shouting out to? I think about 38 people.
We've got a bunch of people to shout out to, y'all. The sticker campaign. I've been giving Sherwin props all week on this, and who deserves the props more than Sherwin is everybody who has contacted us and wants to get their sticker. We've got pictures from folks who have now received their stickers, their PETM official sticker, and put it on places that I wouldn't even think about. I think we've had a couple cars already, and I'm just tickled to death about that. I got one on the back of my truck. We've got them above door jams. I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all, everybody who we've received pictures from, and I'll just start with Darren Williams Jr. at Darin Williams Jr. Looks like right above a door jam alongside some K&N and Jegs, which is awesome.
Got good word. He digs on some root beer.
He digs on some root beer. His next root beer is on the PETM podcast when we see him at a tailgate. Our perennial fan, Drunken Brian France at Drunk Brian F, received his and gave us a picture there. Looking forward to see where he sticks it.
Well, he's been a great help to exposure for us, and we're really appreciative of it.
Absolutely. And speaking of great exposure and somebody who's been a fan for a while, old Kenny Smith at USMC Kenny SGT. He sent us a couple pictures, but one of them's on the back of his, looks like, is that a Ford?
Trailblazer, I think is what he said it
Trailblazer.
was.
Sorry about that. But yeah, he's got it up there with his 24K sticker. He's the man on the bullet 50 caliber bottle opener. Y'all get you some, and
the Bullets to Bandages campaign, which is trying to monetize these spent military rounds towards helping out wounded veterans.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I don't like to play favorites, but his aesthetically looks the best on the back. There was a spot that needed a sticker on the back of his car. And I'm glad he's got the PETM
it was
sticker
well
on.
placed.
It's perfectly placed. I love it. And finally, Matt Manjack at MJMPGH sent us a picture. He had just opened his package, and we've got the PETM sticker. That's not the last one. I lied. We've got one more on the back of a window. Scott Jones, which is at WSJ42081. He had put it on the back of his Ford there. And it's real pretty looking. There's another sticker just below it. I can't tell what it says. HHI, something like that. But
Hilton Head Island.
Hilton Head Island. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's hard to read, so I couldn't think and read at the same time. So, man, we really appreciate y'all. This is really cool to see that kind of spread out. If you want your sticker, of course, email us at PETM@PETMpodcast.com. But shout out to all y'all. And Sharon, you got a shout out too. Oh, one more shout out before we get there. 700 followers, man.
We got to 700.
We got to 700.
I apologize to whoever with the 700th follower was. There's been so many notifications. It's really hard to keep track of, and that sounds like boasting. It's not. It's just a reality. We're up to 713. That's awesome. Recent follower is a young open wheel racer named Hannah Zellers. So thank you for following us, Hannah Zellers.
I need a sound effect when we talk about followers. I don't know. Let me see if I can find. Oh no, that's a fart. That's no good. There's my.
Holy sh!
There's that.
There's that one. What if we had one that was like, "Hey man, can I get your autograph?" Like a generic one or something.
Oh, maybe something like that. Well, y'all got the fart and the holy bleep.
We'll figure it out.
Let's see. So one other one. Yeah, you had another person to shout out today.
Did I?
You did. At Sport Sandra.
Oh, that's right. How did I forget? Yeah. At Sport Sandra. That's Sandra Golden. She's a local radio host on 680 The Fan, the morning show, The Front Row. She's the resident NASCAR fan at 680 The Fan in Atlanta. And she ensures that we always get just a little bit of NASCAR on that show. And she's going to be at the race. Of course, I've asked if she would come to the tweet up. I suspect that's a long shot. But she's been very gracious on Twitter, interacting with me when I've asked her questions or tweeted her silly things. So appreciate her.
Little technical update. I think I'm finally finished messing with all of our technical crap. Which we got the new website up. I've pointed iTunes at the right place miraculously. We didn't have any hiccup in that. And our final thing that I've moved over now, we've moved over to Podbean as our host for the podcast stuff.
Embedded bug is a little bit more cleaned up.
Yeah. So the embedded bug should look good. I think we can embed it on Twitter. I just got to figure out exactly how to do that, but we'll figure it out in the next few minutes. But
cool.
So we're over on Podbean. That's all the technical updates. So if y'all seen any little blips there, just let us know. But yeah, really appreciate everybody listening in. I'm going to bring it up here.
Uh-oh.
Yep.
Going all the way out.
I know. You always sound disappointed. I'm disappointed we have to end it, but at some point,
it has to end. Yeah.
At some point, our
people are already tired of listening to us. I'm sure.
Right.
I'm not tired of listening to myself. Yeah, let's do the jelly bean closeout challenge.
Jelly bean closeout challenge. I'm Tailgate Mayor. That's at Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace.
I'm Andrew Sherwin. That's at pregame ENG.
Don't forget, go to the website. It's like it's PETMpodcast.com. It's cool as crap.
Yep, and we got this email thing going on too. PETM@PETMpodcast.com.
And email us, get your sticker.
Get your sticker. You can DM the podcast handle, or you can email us.
Hit the
whatever
number.
GChat, Facebook. We do have a Facebook. Y'all can just search PETM Podcast, Racing Podcast on Facebook.
Something like that.
Get you some of these beer-flavored Jelly Bellies.
Yeah, this is pretty good. All right, man. We'll talk to y'all next. We'll talk to y'all from Atlanta.
We're going to be at the racetrack. Woo! Thumbs up, y'all.
See y'all then.
Damn, the jelly beans are good as hell.